Welcome back to the Shine Within podcast. Sheila Buswell is the CEO and co-founder of Buswell Biomedical, a U.S. Army veteran. Thank you for your service, by the way. And the author of Is This Seat for Me? Overcoming Imposter Syndrome in Everyday Life and Business. In her book, Sheila shares her own journey with imposter syndrome alongside stories from a diverse group of successful individuals who battled self-doubt but found ways to overcome it. She aims to inspire others to break free from limiting beliefs and realize they are enough. That's right. We are enough, right? Sheila, thank you so much for being on my show today.
I am, Gina, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so looking forward to speaking with you. I know we just had a beautiful conversation. We should have hit record earlier because we were talking about some great stuff, but we're going to be talking about the same stuff here for our listeners to be inspired by you and your book. And by the way, I just want to say again, thank you for your service. My father was who was murdered when I was a baby, but he did a fight. He was in Vietnam, and then my oldest brother, who's 11 years older, was in the Gulf War. So I have a heart for all of our veterans, and I appreciate all of you. So thank you for your service and thank you.
Thanks. That's great to hear.
Yes. So let's just talk about your book. What inspired you to write Is This Seat for Me and focus on imposter syndrome in both everyday life and business.
So, this is probably a character flaw, Gina. I don't like to be bad at things or not. I don't like to be told things whatever. I like, I don't like things to be completely foreign to me. And I spent most of my adult life as an engineer. So all of a sudden, I started this business and I was taking business classes and then I was also pitching my business. And when I was taking those business classes, when I ask a question to further my business knowledge, oh, that's imposter syndrome. And I didn't even know what that was at the time. At the same time, I was having, like, when I was pitching my business, uh, my husband, I usually walk with a cane. My husband was, with me and I had to go to the bathroom. So he walked me to the bathroom and I went in and he stayed outside and people came up to him and they're like, oh, you look like what is expected to come up with this device or whatever, like to invent. And he's like, no, you have to wait for her to come out before you can ask. And these kind of things were happening at the same time. And I started to doubt myself, like, do I belong? Uh, Should I have been the one that come up with this? And then the more people I talked after that, I talked to more people, just people I knew, people who I did yoga next to with, people I've been friends with for a long time, people, and it seems like everybody had it that I talked to. And not only that, they're like wanted to tell me stories of how it affected them. So I don't think I mean, I wrote the book after I was like so amazed that this is something that isn't talked about all the time. And, it's something everybody experiences. And it's like, I wanted to, I wanted to share that, okay, yeah, this happens, but that doesn't mean, you can't battle it or, give people the weapons that I've used and, others have used to battle the negative voices in our head that tell us we're not enough, right? So I
So
wrote a book
true.
about it.
That's amazing. I'm going to be writing a book, by the way. I haven't written it fully, but I've started. Yay, I started. That's the most important thing is actually starting. But I'm excited. Now, how was your whole writing process? I mean, what did you go through emotionally? We're talking about imposter syndrome. Did you ever have those feelings within you saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm writing a book. Am I okay? Should I be doing this?" Did those thoughts ever occur to you?
Well, I've multiple times because I spent a long time writing the book, and then it was like, oh, my business accountability partner, Gloria, who does professional organizing, and she's like, this is something I've experienced. Why don't you have people, contribute stories and tell what it's like for other people? But it shows up, right? Like every time I'm like, oh, this is taking so long. It's because I have no business doing this. Or my book is only it's like 113 pages or something. And I do the imposter syndrome thing there. Well, I'm not really a writer because if I was, the book would be longer. It was like, it's weird how those negative voices in your head can just take over.
Totally. And for our listeners, by the way, in case you don't know, can you define what imposter syndrome is?
There's like a clinical definition, but I really think it's just self-doubt, and it gets called different things in different situations by different people or people who experience it. But I just think that feeling of like, oh, I don't belong here, and people are going to find out that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I've been doing this unqualified. And you do have all the qualifications. You are there for a reason, but anytime you experience that self-doubt or that I'm not enoughness, um, plays in your head. That's imposter syndrome, I think.
Totally. And I think I was also sharing with you my imposter syndrome and what I'm experiencing now, because I didn't even know about what it was until I got into a business coaching group called The Collective. It's actually called the Pitch Club, but the group was called The Collective, and it was amazing. And people were talking about imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome, imposter syndrome. I'm like, what is imposter syndrome? And it wasn't until recently that I started to experience it, because I was sharing with some other guests on my podcast that I feel like I'm going through this quantum leap, and where I feel like I'm not ready yet. I have a fear of success because I feel like I want to take baby steps, but the universe has different plans for me. And it's saying, no, you're taking giant leaps. And I'm like, I'm not ready yet. What would you, what would you tell to somebody like me how to feel like I'm supposed to be doing what I'm doing? Is there any advice or suggestions you would give me?
Well, in my book, I have these 5 personal suggestions. And the first one is just remembering your past experience or your past achievements and experiences. Like, it's so easy for that voice in your head to convince you, because everybody has it. It's evolutionarily there to keep us safe, right? But we have to say, okay, I can do this because I've done that. And before that, I did this. And you build on that. And then, like, the military, the army makes you run 2 miles. I ended up running a couple marathons, but I didn't like pop out of the ground running marathons, right? I worked up to it. And I told myself, well, I can run a 5K because the army made me run 2 miles. I can run, like you can build off distances in the same way I feel like you can build off of your past and what you've done. And then my second thing is to just be mindful of your thinking, because your um thinking can go negative and you don't even know it. But if you're aware of it and you're cognizant, you're going to be like, oh, I'm talking to myself in a way that I wouldn't accept people talking to somebody I loved. And when you're just aware of that, it's just, I think it's very powerful to just be aware. And
Awareness is key.
well, it is key. Awareness is key. Like one of the third thing is the personal solution is not to compare yourself to others. And if you're aware that you're comparing your reality to somebody's highlight reel, people on social media don't put the whole thing, right? They put the highlights. And if you compare, oh, I woke up this morning struggling. You woke up 4 a.m., you said, right, Gina? And
Yeah.
if I said, oh, am I lazy because I slept till 6? Like, you can't compare that. You can't compare. You don't know what you're doing on your journey, and you don't know whether that person is on theirs. You just know what they put on social media. And like Michael Jordan, and this is old, this is before social media, but they only showed pictures of him making the basket. They didn't really talk about how many times he was cut or like how he responded to being cut. And I think we talked about this too before the thing about failure being the first attempt in learning. He didn't like get mad. His mom didn't storm down to be like, the coach is bad one. He made himself better so that next time he wasn't cut. And I'd like to think if you were comparing, you know, our reality with Michael Jordan got cut, here my low with that low, it would be okay. But we don't do that as humans. We just see, oh, Becky is going on vacation or Becky got so many promotions, and we don't know how long or what those promotions are like, right? So anyway, not to compare yourself to others and just give yourself grace is the fourth one. God, it's so easy to say, but so hard to do. It's so easy to be like, you beat yourself up, talk to yourself like you wouldn't allow people to talk to somebody you loved, and then just being aware of that. But I think give yourself grace. Yeah, that has totally changed or evolved. If initially it was give myself grace. I'm not going to be, this is what I look like. This is how tall I am. That's not going to be changed. And I accept that. Um, now it's changed even more to be like, okay, I had pneumonia and I was moving and I had this business going on and there was just stuff that didn't happen. And it was really hard for an extended period of time. But I had to give myself grace that, okay, yes, this stuff is not getting done and it quote unquote needs to get done. But I'm also sick and I need to get better and give myself grace over, okay, I didn't put this stuff away. Sometimes the plates you have spinning all fall to the ground and you just got to, move on. And that involves giving yourself grace. And the last one I got from my grandmother, my dad's mom that lived with us, that she would always, confront something that I thought was very detrimental at the time or, something horrible, right? But she was like, "Will this matter in a year?" And a lot of times she was right. If it didn't matter in a year, like something I thought was devastating at the time really didn't matter in the scheme of life. It's just like when someone cuts you off in traffic as an adult, you get really angry. Like for me, if I get cut off in a few breaths, I'm fine, but I'm initially really angry. It definitely won't, I don't remember, oh, I got cut off on my way here a year from now. Like that's not going to happen. And there are times where it takes grace too. I'm not perfect at picking what will matter in a year and what won't. But I think that's a practice too. You get better at it as you do it. Those are my personal suggestions.
I love it. And often talk about giving yourself grace and compassion because it's true. We're so hard on ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. And I was sharing with you that I was always playing the comparison game. If I didn't look like Cindy Crawford, then I sucked.
Yeah, no, I think we're about the same age because the same thing. I mean, gosh, I had a larval stage that was 20 years, that was my life. And I look like Napoleon Dynamite. Not a female version of Napoleon Dynamite, but I have that same thing. I'm like, oh, I'm not even gonna begin to look like Cindy Crawford. So I'm just gonna go ahead with my thick glasses and braces and crazy hair and, lean into it. So, but the fact that I couldn't be perfect, I didn't even do anything.
Yeah, I was doing she had those workout videos a long time ago. See, my sister, she's 10 years older than me. And so she was a model. She was very tall, very thin. And I was like complete opposite. Not short. I'm 5'5". I'm not short, but but compared to her and my brother who is 6'8", yeah, I'm a little bit short. But I remember doing those hardcore workouts trying to get this perfect body. I'm like, oh, sweat. And I was in fifth grade, Sheila, fifth grade. Can you believe that? Like, what the
Wow.
heck?
And that makes me sad. But again, like the comparisons and the age. Oh my God, kids today, if you're that age, like in your it was fifth grade for you. What is it? How
Right.
you, yeah. So, oh, that's heartbreaking in a
Oh,
way. Like I've recently, the kid who played the young Conan, like he was all this workout muscles hanging out, and he's like gets over it by the time he's an adult, right? Like now he doesn't look like that. Now he doesn't work out at all. Now is whatever. And I do think that that can be too much of something, right? Is not good either. And especially early on, you can change because now I know that I will never be Cindy Crawford, but that's okay.
that's okay because you're Sheila.
Right. And you're Gina. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I love myself now. I never loved myself before. I tell you, I hated myself. Always had that negative self-talk all the time. Self-doubt was there. So yeah, I had a lot of imposter syndrome. But now I give myself, like we're talking about, grace and compassion, and ask myself, would I talk to myself as I would a stranger or a child? And the answer is no, then I need to examine myself. Why am I talking to myself this way? And it does happen sometimes. Like I'll be doing the dishes and I'll drop something like, oh, Gina, you're so, I would say in my mind, stupid, right? But I'm like, I stop myself like, no, I'm not. I just dropped a plate. So what?
Right.
Like, let me just clean this up. So stopping myself and before I said something negative to myself actually really helps me too.
Well, even though you're just saying it to yourself, you have kids. So the kids are going to hear it and like think that that's normal. And it's okay to, you broke a dish. You didn't, calling yourself stupid. That's not fair. Like
I
I
know.
literally looked for my cell phone with a flashlight on my cell phone. And I was like, oh, but I've got a master's in it, but I needed to tell myself that instead of being like, oh, you're stupid. So I think that it's not just you, but it's bad for you. It's definitely bad to be overhearing it. And that's how that stuff spreads. Like,
Yeah. Like with sunglasses on the head. Where are my sunglasses? You realize I've done that so many times. It's so funny. Oh, and I catch my kids because they're in the school system and so they'll pick up on whatever the other kids are saying, or even maybe the teachers are saying to themselves, and they'll pick up on that. And then in the household, they'll say something to themselves negatively. I'm like, no, why are you talking to yourself that way? I have to teach them now. No one taught me. My mom growing up, she always cared about what everyone thought about her and her family and her kids. And we had to be like this picture perfect family. And we were not. I'll tell you that, obviously, I mean, I was an alcoholic for a daughter back then. We were not. But finally she's come up to me and said, I don't really care what people think about me anymore. I said, all right, took you 75 years. I'm just kidding. But finally she's saying, she doesn't care about what other people think anymore. She just wants to make sure she's happy, her family's well, and that's all that matters, because people go through crap. They go through crap.
I think, oh my gosh, she wins, right? Like that's little kids, you can plant that negative seed, but it takes you 75 years to outgrow it or like, but I think that that's normal. Like my mom, right? She's still like has this idea that she needs to be thin, she needs to work out, but she's in her 80s. That doesn't go away. I would like to think at some point you just win and you're like, "Oh, yep, I'm not this, I'm not that, but that's okay." Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your time in the military. Can you actually share how your time in the military influenced your perspective on imposter syndrome? And in what ways has it helped you resist traditional feelings of self-doubt?
Uh, I think, well, first of all, when I joined the military, I lost my scholarship and I thought, oh, go to the army, go to jail is what most of these people are. But the truth was, most of those people just wanted exit velocity. They're smart and they're funny. And okay, people are people. And I think that was a lesson I took with me after going into the military. Like I started going, when I went into the army, I thought I was better than everybody else, smarter than everybody else. And then I was in it and it was like, oh no, it's everything. Like there's everybody. People are people. And just, you can't put people in these boxes. And I learned that there's people in their 70s who don't know that, right? So I learned that in my 20s, probably later than I should. But again, I gave myself grace, like, okay. But the way it helped me, I think, move pat in one way, I have imposter syndrome about like makeup and babies because that's not my path. That wasn't, but the military prepared me for being an engineer. Like I went into classes where I was a few, if not the only woman. I was even asked once if I was lost. So it was very easy for me to be like, do I belong here? Do I, like that self-doubt would creep in, but I'd be like, no, I was in the military. I did this and that's, whatever. So it was like I built in that way. But then, 20 years after not I'm really solid in my engineering. I'm solid in this, I'm solid in that, but I will go on a bad mental downward spiral over mascara, over a makeup brush. Like I have my kryptonite too. And I feel there was a balance of, the things that it benefited, definitely more benefit, but it did have a downside too.
Yes. Now, I wanted to ask you also, like, what are some of those false assumptions people have made about you, especially in light of your gender and your career background?
So I don't want to make it all about like, because I had a lot of positive experiences at work, but I was told, um, you're only a diversity hire. You were hired because you're a woman. I mean, and and I was told, oh, you need to act more manly or differently or whatever to be taken seriously and just don't act so quote. I don't even like to say girly because we're talking about grown women, but that was what was said to me. And 20 years later, I don't feel feminine enough around groups of women. So those false assumptions are also women, right? Like I had a sister-in-law who just, I don't want to say threw a baby in my lap, but she handed me a baby thing and I just got stiff. And people assume all the time that I would love to go shopping, that I know about makeup and want to hold your damn baby. But that's, I mean, it's kind of weird how we talked before about how your brain is there to keep you safe, right? But it talks to you like, do you belong here? And you look to the left and right. And I do look when I look to the left and right, I don't see other women, right? When in those situations, I would see a woman who I thought had perfectly coiffed hair or perfect makeup, or she was dressed, and I felt, oh, whatever, fill in blank here. It's gonna get humid. I walk with a, like, it's a weird how the barrage of negative comments come in. But in the engineering world, I was fine because I could give myself pep talks about what I had done previously, including, my time in the military. I built on my time in the military when I would walk into classes and I would look to the left or right of me and I was the only one of me. And so my brain was like, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. And I was like, no, I do. And this is why I can do hard things too, I think.
Yes, I mean, you're CEO. Can you talk about your company and also the Upmo device?
I love talking about this. So yes, Gina, yes, I can. In 1997, I joined the Army, like we talked about. In 1998, I deployed to Bosnia, where I was injured in an accident. A generator fell on my foot, and I rehabbed and then got a medical discharge in 2001, completing my education. I got obtained a MS in engineering. And then, like 20 years after my accident, my mom has an accident and she results in a broken hip. And so she has to rehab for weeks in this rehab facility in Arizona. And in the intervening 20 years between my accident and my mom's, nothing had changed. I mean, I had a master's in engineering. Mostly when I worked for companies, like I was automating things. I think like your husband, he's a engineer too, right?
Mhm.
So like I have this experience now in this education, but I also have this, oh, this happened to me 20 years ago. I know what my mom's going through. So I sat there, um, just at first, my first being mindful of my thinking, my first impulse was to burn that place down. I was mean to the people who were well-intentioned, they're healthcare workers. But as I sat with it, I solved the problem. Oh, they could. So I thought at that time I would just I would go work for the company that's developing that. And then, you know, uh, found out nobody's developing it. So I created Buswell Biomedical to develop this medical mobility device that uses sensors and artificial intelligence to allow people to conduct the activities of daily living, like toileting, independently, while healthcare worker knows where you are and how you are, but they can prioritize doing other tasks. Anyway, because the standard of care today it is uh, healthcare workers accompany you to the same thing my mom had and what I had, only now there's fewer healthcare workers. So I had to give myself, I had to give myself a pep talk. And I was like, well, if not you, then who? And you have the skill set, you have the empathy, you have the whatever experience, but I don't look like a CEO normally does. And I had that negative self-talk too. Like, I've never ran a business before. Should I be doing this? And then I had to give myself the pep talk and remembering my past experiences. And this is the question I asked myself. If not you, then who? And I asked it over again, over and over again. So I ended up, the Buswell Biomedical is developing the upward mobility. That's what we call the device, the UPMO, UPMO. And you know what? I started this business and I'm co-founder, I'm an inventor, and I have a master's in engineering and all this stuff. But I too, like, I learned how much I can talk negatively to myself, that I can doubt myself. And I think that that's in everything, right? Like,
Yes, we're human beings here on Earth trying to do this whole thing together. We're trying to figure out how to live here on this planet, right?
yep,
So we're just doing the best that we can. But yes, as being a human being, we experience emotions, negative talk, self-doubt, criticism, whatever that it is. But it's just navigating through that, uh, eliminating those negative beliefs, giving yourself the grace and compassion, and just pushing through and saying, hey, if I fail, it's all good. I am learning in the process and I am not going to give up. What did they say? Someone told me it's the three P's of manifestation is persistence, perseverance, and what's the third P? I'm having brain farts all day today. Patience, patience, patience. Yes. And so, yeah.
patience is another one that's so hard to do.
Yeah.
I'm getting better though. Small improvements, baby steps.
Baby steps, yes. And that's something that my husband is working on too, patience, because he's like, I gotta work on my patience. I gotta work on my patience. And well, be patient when you're having to sell yourself. I gotta work on my patience. Be patient about it. Take some deep breaths and you'll get through it. But that's awesome that you have your own business. You're doing amazing things as an engineer, military veteran, CEO. You're doing it all. How do you actually manage between personal success and the self-doubt that often accompanies leadership roles?
Oh, it's so the hardest thing I have found to do is like to be in a leadership role because you doubt yourself, right? Or you got to go do this. Is that the right thing to do? Should I be telling other people that? And I think there's the impulse of micromanagement is like, oh, I want to make sure that this thing is done right. So I want to check in 500 times. And I don't know that I balance everything correctly or like how, but I know that I'm more aware because I've had bad leaders in the past and I can balance my self-doubt and what needs to be done. And usually it's if you believe in yourself, the people around you are going to believe in you too. But you can't be totally questioning, oh, is this the right thing to do? And it's okay if that's an internal monologue. It's not okay if it's like the anxiety shows on your face. And I think over time that happens, right? Like you get better at dealing with all those things.
Totally. Yes, 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 yes. Now, for our listeners who want to go ahead and purchase your book or even just to connect with you, how can they contact you?
So the book Is the Seat for Me is available in all the places, but I have found the easiest way to access all the versions. It comes in ebook, paperback, and an Audible book or an audiobook, but that's available on Apple too. It's not just Amazon. That too is available in all the places. But then to contact me, I have the website istheseatforme.com and just enter in your email and we'll exchange an email conversation. And it's just me and I'm not going to spam you. I feel like I would love to talk and know what you want to hear more about. And I'm sure your listeners, that they want to get what everything they can out of your podcast. And, I want to know what I should be talking about more.
Beautiful. And lastly, what advice would you go ahead and give to someone experiencing imposter syndrome during a major life transition, especially like recovery?
Well, I think, and recovery is a lot. And it's of just the experience of knowing that you're not alone and that I would give myself I always give myself the pep talk of why I'm here. Like for my business, when I started, it was like, why, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? If not, and then like, as you give yourself props mentally for stuff that you've done and accomplished, I think that you can move on to the next.
Yes, the next level. I always said, I think one solo podcast I did, I think I said something about, remember Super Mario Brothers back in the day, the
Yeah.
original one? So I remember playing and I would try to beat that bad guy at the end and get over to the castle. And I would die. I would die. I would die. But I would never give up because I wanted to get to the next level. And that's the same thing in life. Like, don't give up. Keep trying, because you will eventually get to the next level. And it's all good.
Well, how many times? I mean, I think you quit drinking when it started to affect your life, but is that the first time you quit drinking, or
Oh
did
my
you?
goodness. I've relapsed many times, but I wanted to quit because I had an end goal in mind.
I think that's how most things are, and that's how you have to look at it. Um, it's not going to succeed necessarily the first time. If it does, great. If not, go back, and that's the first attempt in learning, and then you learn from it and move on.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, anything else you would like to share to our audience today?
If you go to the istheseatforme.com and enter in your information, I forgot to mention this, you get a free chapter of the book. You can either ebook it or audiobook. You can choose then. And I honestly want to say that the audiobook, although it's not the most expensive, it's around $7, is really my favorite way to consume this information. Like there's different voice actors doing all the different voices for all the different contributors. And I just think like it's a entertaining way. So, and reach out to me. I mean, I'm not going to spam you, so let's just have a conversation.
Sounds great, Sheila. Well, thank you so much for being on my show. I really loved our conversation. You're so much fun. And then congratulations on all the accomplishments you have done. That's awesome.
Thank you.